Horse and getting children.
Okay.
All right, at this time, I think we're ready, and again, I want to thank everyone for coming.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you here today. Margaret told me she had booked TM to speak to you folks, and I said, I want to introduce him. So she has allowed me to do that. By the way, for those of you who don't know me, I'm best known at Mullins as Margaret Brown's husband. There we go. Anyway, I'm so very glad to be here. I won't tell you too much because I don't want to step on TM's program. But I guess it was about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. Carmen informed me that she had met this guy online. He was German. And that they were starting dating. And that wasn't too long after that they were going to get married. Well, meanwhile, I had been notified about a website which TM's on. And I looked at it and went into just complete shock. Not only was he a bad person, he was a horrible human being in those days when he was younger. But Carmen assured me that that's not who T.M. Garret was now. That he was totally different, that those were young years, he got hooked up with the wrong people and made mistakes, but he was not that person now. Well, they got married upstairs, and I had to trust my daughter. I didn't completely trust T.M., but I had to trust my daughter. And now here, almost 10 years later, it chokes me up to talk about it. I just cannot tell you how pleased I am to introduce T.M. Garret as my son-in-law. He not only changed his life in those days, but over the years he has come up with programs to help others escape the same situation he found himself in. He speaks all over the country. He was in Grand Rapids, Michigan Sunday, flew back in here Sunday night, and here he is bright and early on Tuesday morning. So without further ado, and taking too much of his time, I proudly introduce my son-in-law, T.M. Garret.
Okay, again, I'm going to take this off because I can't stand still. I need to walk around. So thank you, Dave, for introducing me. And I remember these times very well. I remember the first time I met Dave and Margaret at the house for Easter, and everything was still okay. And they knew we were going to marry, and maybe a week later, we had the first talk with Margaret, and then I remember to this day where I said we had pizza that night. We had the very serious talk where we told Dave we're still gonna get married, and I remember his words. He said, okay, if we sit again here in 3 years and we're still good, then we're good. Now it's 9. So, and I'm very, very happy that I did not disappoint neither Carmen, especially Carmen, nor her parents. And yes, that was a time in my life about 20 years ago when I was a different person. And I've talked about this a lot. Dave said I'm talking all across the country. And, you know, when you do that, it's very often that you don't do that at home very often. So a home game is always nice. And I remember my first home game. And even though it's been already 7 years, neither Dave nor Margaret had seen my full program, which means with a lot of pictures of my past and detail. They didn't know anything about that I did it, and that it's different now. And what I do know. But the details about the past, they actually didn't know. And I remember, you know, I've spoken at the New York City Hall in front of the City Council. I've spoken at places like the Capitol in Springfield, Illinois, State Capitol, and so on, places where I was really excited and a little bit nervous. But the first time I had this home game at the University of Memphis, I was a wreck. Because it was the first time Dave and Margaret would be there, and I couldn't eat. My stomach wasn't not, and at least Tom was there that helped me a lot. And I wasn't sure how they're going to react for seeing these pictures the first time. Fortunately, everything was very good, and I could eat afterwards. So let's start with actually the last couple of years. The last couple of years, we've seen developments in friends and family members and other people we know and love, but they changed seemingly overnight. Overnight, they have adapted radical ideas about politics, about COVID-19, that goes so far that we wanted to exclude them from next Christmas or Thanksgiving dinner. And we wonder, how can it happen overnight? That people have these outlandish ideas, seemingly overnight. And we want to love these people, and it's so hard to do that. And where does it come from? This hate, this extremism that so many people seem to fall for. People we've seen last year, January 6th, in Washington, D.C., at the country's capital, actually. How did this happen? Seemingly normal people, and all of a sudden they were ready to commit or put physical harm on other people. To answer this question, we decided to look at an example that we can use to get to the bottom of these questions. And that's the most extreme example we could find. That's myself. And at this point, when I speak, people usually have two questions. Question number one is usually, how can people get into an environment like that? Not only adapting extreme ideas, but getting into hate groups, real hate groups, like the guys with the white hoods and stuff, the swastikas. And the number two question, that's probably the biggest question mark that's over y'all's heads, is, can people change? And how can they change? And let's try to get to the bottom of this. And for that, we have to do a little bit of time traveling to the year 1975, and this little town in southern Germany. And when I say little, it is little. 500 citizens, hasn't grown ever since. That's what it is. Very conservative, very tight community, almost all that Protestant. They didn't like newbies very much. My parents just had moved there the year before I was born, with a lot of problems. Newbies in town, a new dialect, there were Catholics. Nobody really wanted them. There were also alcoholics. They didn't put a good light on them either. And then in 1975, they had a divorce. We're talking about 1975. That was a no-go. If I look back at my school years, all the other classmates had a functional family, and both their parents, and I had a single mother. And I always thought something was wrong with little TM. I was a little bit of a weird kid. I didn't speak English at the time, but I liked music. I liked the Beatles. I liked Elvis, and I was 8 years old trying to sing "Love Me Tender." That is weird if you're not from Memphis. And at that time, I wasn't from Memphis. So, but there was other problems too. Let's look at a couple pictures together. So that's my child. It looks actually like a normal child. So I like to work on my bicycle. On the top right, you see I got a chalkboard for Christmas and started to learn writing. And the guitar. You see the Beatles in the background? Still love them today. Even the haircut fits. And I wanted to play the guitar so bad. And I thought my mom just didn't care. There was no guitar lessons. I like to write short stories. She wouldn't read it. My older sister read it. She's 13 years older. I have another sister, 11 years older. And a brother who's 8 years older. You see that gap. 8 years and nothing happened. And then TM happened. And I literally happened to my mother during that divorce. She had no idea what to do with me. And I think her main mission was to get me through school so I can be somebody, so I can get a good job. And other than that, she didn't know what to do. She had other problems. How little did I know the demons she was fighting. But I thought she doesn't care. I thought nobody cared. Because I couldn't play the guitar. Nobody cared about the stories. Nobody cared about the jokes that I was telling. So next picture. shows like my mother, even though she was drinking, I never starved. I always had over-the-top school supplies and over-the-top school clothes. And this is a picture of my first day in school. And when I say over-the-top school clothes, this is what I mean. The other kids had like jeans and khakis. I had these flared pants, whatever. The other kids had polo shirts and unique color shirts. I had this shirt, and I still tried to figure out to this day if there's flowers on it or whatever. I had the same haircut again, and the glasses you get bullied for. And I got bullied a lot. And the cone that I'm holding, that's a tradition in Germany. First day of school, you would get that. And it used to be full of candy. Nowadays, I'm sure it's full of iPhones and stuff like that. In my case, it was real candy. And I think that's the main reason I was smiling. I was just ready to pop the cone. So, first day of school. And the next picture, there we go. You can tell it's the 80s. If you have ever watched Miami Vice, you know what I'm talking about. Still looks like a normal teenager. I remember wedding rehearsal of my sister's wedding. And normal kid. And then overnight, I came home like this. Seemingly overnight. And my mother thought, what happened to my son overnight? Yesterday he was still okay. Looked like Don Johnson, and now, look at him. She didn't understand what was going on. You know, like all our friends that we were talking about just a couple of minutes earlier, it happened seemingly overnight. Nobody saw it coming. Well, it's not that easy. Of course, things like that don't happen overnight. And both pictures were taken. The first one, the 80s Don Johnson picture, was taken when I was about 13 years old. And that was also the time that we learned a certain topic in school. And it was a topic, it was a skeleton in the closet in Germany, the taboo you wouldn't talk about, unless you would point out how horrible it was, that it must never happen again. You would only touch it in history class. So we learned about these guys, the Nazis, the Holocaust, Hitler, and the Third Reich. So I must say Germany has done always a great job reflecting on its past, making up for it, and making sure it must never happen again. So we learned in school that the Nazis were the bad guys. We learned the Holocaust happened, and so on. And we also learned to not to be like that. But 13 years old, boys are in puberty, trying to prove their masculinity, trying to be the bad boy, and they get presented with the worst thing you can imagine. And of course, some of the older boys ran with it and started cracking jokes. Racist jokes, homophobic jokes, Islamophobic jokes, and anti-Semitic jokes about the Holocaust. They also made fun of Hitler. You have to understand, and I'm speaking to a church audience here, it is like in a Baptist church here in the South, you can't talk about the devil, or you cannot make fun of the devil in the Baptist church. It is way too serious. You don't do that. So that was the situation how it was with Hitler, especially in the 1980s and 90s in Germany. You don't make fun of this. Too serious. You can't. But they did. And I did too, because I love jokes. And fortunately, I don't know. For that time, unfortunately, I was a very good joke teller. And I ran with those jokes. And I was always a little bit extreme passionate in things that I'm doing. I don't have a stop button. And I always take things a little bit further than some other people. And unfortunately did it there too, and even created some new jokes and so on. That was not good. The other kids that cracked these jokes went back to normal at some point. And I don't know if that is because they were smarter than I, or did their parents sit down with them and talk to them. Looking back, I think it is because they had a normal to go back to, They had something I didn't have, an identity, a purpose. They didn't have that sense of belonging that I had. Because I remember one was a Boy Scout, another one, the family was organized in the church. Another one, the brother and the father were in the army. He knew he wanted to do that. And another one was into soccer, and tennis was big in the 80s in Germany. And he loved that. They would go see the games or would watch the matches on TV with their dads. Well, they were divorced. I didn't have a dad. He died when I was 8. And there was never ever a father figure again. It was just my mother and one of my sisters left. Because my other sister moved out, got married, my brother went to college. And there was I looking for, who am I? Well, in school, they apparently knew who I am because they knew I was a Nazi. They called me the Nazi kid. And I didn't understand. I was like, wait, in history class we just learned the Nazis died in 1946. They were hung in Nuremberg. I didn't know about neo-Nazis or skinheads. And I was making fun of Hitler. How can I be a Nazi when I'm making fun of Hitler as well? You see, I did something racist. I did something very anti-Semitic, but not for the sake of hating. My intention was attention. But nobody cared for that either. So I was put in a box with a label, a Nazi kid. You know, you see here, you change hands, my hand is falling asleep. You see here that hand is sticking out. This is how I felt. Sticking the hand out, looking for somebody who understands what's going on. But again, question to you all, who likes Nazis in here? Good, I'm happy, I don't see any hands up. But you can see the problem. Everybody thought I was a Nazi, so there was a lot of pointing fingers at me. And if you need a helping hand pulling you out of the box, you can't grab a pointing finger. You need a whole hand. So they put me on the shelf, and I was living in the box on the shelf with a lot of other people with labels. The Nazi kid. Nobody looked in there anymore. It was clear. Did some, walks like a duck, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck. That's how easy it is. Or how easy it seems to be. So, here. Living in a box, you don't know where people are on stages of radicalization. I made this little graphic here, and you see when somebody gets radicalized, it takes longer. This is not overnight. This can be from here to here, can be 10 years, 5 years, or maybe today with the help of internet and YouTube and TikTok, and the rabbit hole you're falling in can be maybe even like only a month. In my case, it was a longer time, about 10 years to be fully radicalized. So at the beginning, the white dot was just cracking those jokes very unintentionally, just for the sake of attention. And the darker the dot gets, the more radicalized I got. And this stands for the hate crime. That stands for many people in those movements at the end. So I soon arrived at this second, a little bit darker dot, when somebody gave me a cassette tape with hate music. And it was the soft version of hate music that really exists. And extremists of all kinds are really, really good at that, selling their propaganda. And what they do is they sell you something that resonates with you, that is a personal truth, a subjective truth that is uniquely true to you. And in my case, they were singing about something that I really felt, because at the time I started adapting a little bit, a couple attributes of the far right. I started to be a proud German. And in Germany, you have to realize it's a little bit different from here. Here, it's not a big deal if you say, I'm proud to be an American. But in Germany, to say, I'm proud to be a German, that puts you in the far right corner with the Nazis already. Because Germans have been there. They know how quick it can go. From patriotism, to nationalism, to National Socialism, ending up in a genocide. That went quick, if you look at the history. So it was clear. I'm a Nazi, but these bands on this cassette tape were singing, you're just a proud German, but they call you a Nazi, right? I was like, wow. How do they know how I feel? Nobody else cared. Only these people on this cassette tape. They were speaking a truth that was uniquely true to me. It's like, this is interesting. How do they know me without knowing that? I need to know these guys. I need to get to know them. Those skinheads on this tape. And I found some of those skinheads at a county fair, and I joined them. And I must say, overseas at that time, especially in the 80s, it was a little bit more subculture. It was not a criminal gang with drugs and stuff like that. It evolved from the punk scene at the time. It was still a lot of provoking, etc. But I joined them, and soon I looked like this. So this is all me on this picture. And you can see all of a sudden I could play the guitar. All of a sudden there was people that cared, or seemingly cared. I used some of the jokes that I used to tell, made them into lyrics. I created some new lyrics. Sometimes I made lyrics that were more radical than what I believed in, just because the crowd wanted to hear it, and I wanted to be liked. Everybody wants to be liked. And I toured all over Europe and even in the US at the time. That was about the year 19 1995, 1996. And at the same time, I was still just, it was about provoking at that time, mostly. Ideology hasn't kicked in yet. Then, at the same time, I was introduced to a neo-Nazi party in Germany. And you have to understand that there's another big problem that there was. I told you about the age I was 13 and we learned about the Holocaust. Now, I was born in 1975. That is 30 years after the liberation of Auschwitz. Only 30 years. Which means a lot of the grandparents that were alive during World War II were still alive when I went to school and learned that. My great-grandmother was alive, my grandmother was alive, a lot of grandfathers of my friends were still alive. And all of a sudden we had to ask ourselves the question, if the people we love, our grandparents, maybe had been involved in any of those atrocities or in the Holocaust. So of course, that generation didn't talk about the war that much. So a lot of us kids didn't know. And that's a question nobody wants to ask themselves, no matter if you're 5, 13, or 35. So you swept it under the carpet, ignored it away. But this neo-Nazi party had a simple solution for that, because they were Holocaust deniers. They claimed the Holocaust didn't happen, which means if it didn't happen, your grandparents were not involved in anything, couldn't have. They also claimed Germany didn't start the World War II, which we know that's not true. But that's what they taught, that's what the propaganda was. Which means, if my grandparents only defended their country, and there was no Holocaust, so they were heroes for their country. That looks much better than if you had to deal with my grandparents maybe were criminals. Problem solved. But they also had another propaganda going on. Germany first, immigrants are infesting the country, the communists want to take over, swap out the population. That became my new ideology. All of a sudden I was a nationalist. So you see that radicalization, the boy cracking the jokes for the sake of attention, then provoking, and then becoming a nationalist. And Dave said it already, I was a horrible person, I believed horrible things, I was a member of horrible groups, I was also a member of this group here, in Germany, and they existed in Germany since 1920. It's not uniquely American. Hitler banned the KKK in Germany, he didn't like the secrecy, he said you can join a Nazi party. So they died down. So then in the 1960s, American soldiers brought it back to Germany. And then in the 80s, skinheads brought it back to Germany. So it was about 1998 when I joined this group. And I thought that was maybe secret knowledge. And I read some history books that in the US, some judges and governors were members. It was a rude awakening. There were alcoholics in bed sheets. I was not very pleased with the group, fortunately. So I started my own group and became the leader. So I always climbed up the ladder. So we're already 10 years into my radicalization. Starting 1988, 89, cracking these jokes. We're now at 1998. 1998 was very important because a couple things changed. It is what I call the advent of the internet. Before 1998, the internet was not really that important, but all of a sudden, everybody had a computer, everybody had a website, everybody had a AOL modem and dial-in, and so did I. And that changed some things. One thing was you could get in touch with people all across the world in chat rooms. People that thought the same I thought. They believed in that same ideology I believed in. And they told me that they felt the same way about their country. And I was like, oh, so it's not only Germany that's under attack, their country's under attack too. So, and they made me believe the white race is under attack. I never became a white supremacist. But I asked myself, under attack by whom? I said, no, it's not the black people, it's not the communists, there's a bigger enemy. I said, who? Said you need to read a book. And this is something else that changed. I told you Germany has done a great job making up for the Holocaust, that it must never happen again, and therefore there's very strict hate crime laws and hate speech laws. If you deny the Holocaust publicly, publish that, you go to prison. If you spread the propaganda, you get caught, you go to prison. So I fortunately never have been to prison there. Either I haven't been caught or I didn't do the really bad things. So I'm glad that I got out when I got out before I could do worse. But ever since you had to smuggle that propaganda into the country. But now that had changed with the internet, one mouse click. And overnight you had all these forbidden books and the literature. They told me to read one certain book, and it's called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And most of you probably haven't heard of that, and I don't recommend reading it. But it is actually what you call today fake news. It was created by Russian anti-Zionists and anti-Semites in 1903 to discredit Jews and stir hatred. It came to Europe, it was brought to the USA. Henry Ford gave away a copy with each Ford Model T at the time, and Hitler got fascinated by that and got it from Ford. So this is how that went. And in this book, they claim that the Jews are wanting to take over the world. They're behind the money, they're behind everything, behind the media, and they're taking over the world and want to rule the world. And the white race is what stands in between them and world domination, and we can save the whole world. You know, I was a young man, just barely over 20. And they made me feel like I can be a superhero protecting everybody. And I speak a lot to minority groups. Again, in Grand Rapids, it was a synagogue. I speak at black churches, to other black groups. I always ask, who doesn't want to protect their people? And of course, everybody wants to do that. So that doesn't seem necessarily a bad thing. And I had the chance too, from this seemingly overpowerful enemy. It's like you're in Lord of the Rings. You can defend Middle-earth from Mordor. You can be a superhero with a cape. And which kid doesn't want to be a superhero? I was like, yes, give me a cape, of course. And I felt like I'm that superhero. I felt like I found the Holy Grail. This is the solution to all the problems this world has. We get rid of those people, we're good. Now, again, in Germany, there's not many Jews. Unfortunately, it has changed, but at the time, historically, unfortunately, there was not many. So how do Jews look like? Here you're in Memphis, you're very fortunate, especially in East Memphis. There's 10,000 Jewish people in Memphis. So it's easy but in Germany, I didn't know. I remember from elementary school, that was one picture. So I thought, okay, this is how Jews look like, maybe also with a black hat, and they eat gefilte fish all day long. I mean, we also learned Shalom Alachem in school. That's it. I believe 1 hour. Because it's relevant for the Bible. So, but that's it. That's all we learned. Well, the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, they gave us a different picture how Jews look like. And I won't leave it up there long. It's not nice graphics, but it's important to understand what these people spread. This is what the neo-Nazis tell you Jews look like. The Jew taking over the world like a spider. See how dehumanizing this is. Jew counting the money. And this is here from the Nazis in the 1940s from a movie. And this is actually Muslim extremist propaganda from the 2000s. So it is widespread anti-Semitism. But you see, they always look the same. That has not changed. Again, I said I won't leave it up there long. So I have no idea. But these are the people. Okay, it's easy to want to protect the world from these people that you just saw there, if you believe that's how they look like. Of course, we knew it's over-exaggerated, but to us, they are not human. They're totally dehumanized. And we'll talk about dehumanization in a little bit, how important it is to not to dehumanize. Again, stage of radicalization. I think at the time, at the height of my extremism, I had arrived here. And me or some of my members could have easily gone here really quick. And again, the German authorities know that. And again, as I told you, they have their finger good on the problem. So they came and visited me and told me that if one of my members is committing a violent crime, then I will be held responsible. And I would go to prison. You know, I was like, prison doesn't sound really good. You know, but I thought, no, we're telling our members not to commit violent crimes. We're cool. We're actually peaceful. We're telling them not to. I was like, wait a minute. If we would be the hippies and preaching peace and love, there would be no need to tell them not to commit violent crimes, right? So why do we attract those violent people? Maybe because we promote a hateful and violent message. And all of a sudden, it was clear to me that I don't have my members under control. And I was like, that can happen any day, and I couldn't do anything about it. At the time, I had 3 children already overseas, and I knew if I go to prison, I would be no good for them. I also thought if I go to prison, I'm no good for the cause I'm standing for, which I thought was noble at the time. Of course, I know it's wrong. But at the time, I thought that. And I also thought and still believe this prison is a very scary place. I've never been, but I've met people that have been. No way. And my fear was so big that I stepped down from all my positions and I left the KKK in that movement. Sounds great. TM left the Klan. Everything is good. No. Just leaving a hate group doesn't make you an anti-racist all of a sudden. Most people that just leave hate groups for whatever reason, in their heads, they're still racists, neo-Nazis, or anti-Semites. And so was I. I just removed myself. And for the first time, I still was in touch with a couple of members, because you have to realize, living in this movement, you live like in a bubble. In this bubble, you listen only to your own music, you talk only to your own people, you boycott companies and food and music that is not in your movement, and you very often make all your money in this movement too. So did I. I repaired computers, I built computers, and I sold merchandise. I needed the money, I needed the job, so I stayed around these people a little bit longer, 3-4 months until it was still too hot. I was like, if something happens, they might still think I'm behind. And I don't know if it's fair to compare the situation to a woman who is in an abusive relationship, but the dynamics are a little bit the same. Because I was in an abusive relationship with a hate group. And for women in abusive relationships, they very often stay in these relationships even though they know they're toxic. Why is that? Because that's also good times, but the main reason is fear. Fear of rejection. How do people think when you leave? Why did you stay that long? All these questions. You may have to move to another town, maybe find a new job, maybe change your name, and so on. That can be very, very scary. These are all big, big, big steps. I didn't have that courage for a long time, but the fear of prison was much bigger at the time. So I did it, and we decided to cancel our lease, move to another town. And the lease was almost over, and we still haven't found anything. And as bad as the internet is, it's also good sometimes. This is the actual house that we found in the classifieds. The only apartment. And it was up here, these 3 windows, 2 levels, they were for rent. And I called the number. And the guy with the Turkish accent picks up the phone. I'm like, really? The only apartment available is owned by a Muslim immigrant. We're in the year 2002, 1 year after 9/11, and I thought all Muslims are like Osama bin Laden, and he will kill me in my bed at some point, or they want to take over Germany, they're all bad people. That's what I still believed. But I didn't have a choice. I had to move in, because we didn't have anything else, and I started lying to myself. You have to realize people in these movements lie to themselves a lot, because sometimes you meet minorities that you're supposed to hate, and you meet the nice black person, and that doesn't fit in your narrative. So you have to deal with it. So you lie to yourself. Oh, Jim is okay. All other black people are bad. Or you meet the nice Muslim. Oh, Ahmed is okay. All other Muslims are bad. So you have your exceptions. You start lying to yourself. And I did that too. In this case, I said, I will find something else. And I don't have to be friends with the guy. Because the landlord, the Muslim immigrant, he lived here in the same house, in the apartment below. We shared the same hallway. I didn't like the idea, but I would get around it somehow. I don't need to talk to him. The problem was, all of a sudden, I was in Section 8 in welfare because I lost my job. I wasn't in touch with my customers anymore in this movement. And he knew that. And I don't know if he wanted to help out or how genuine it was, but his computer kept breaking, and he asked me if I can help repair it. He would pay me for it. 6 months prior to that, I wouldn't even have put a foot in this house. And then I was sitting in his living room at his desk, repairing the computer. It's just a job. So I lied to myself. He paid me, I went upstairs. Next day he came, our computer broken. I go downstairs, repair it, he pays me, I go upstairs. It went like that for weeks. And I told him at some point, dude, you need to buy a computer. I don't want to do this. And he did. And I swear to God, anything I'm telling you is true, but this is also a true story. The computer arrived in a box. Of course, he needed help setting it up. I went downstairs, pulled it out of the box, plugged it in, and it didn't work. You can't make this stuff up. I don't know. I guess it was supposed to be like this. The master boot record was missing. Never heard it before, never after, never seen this problem ever again. Told Himmons, that was his name. I said, I have to go upstairs and download a program for that, or download the master boot record so I can put it on your computer. 2002, it was a 56K AOL modem, the ones that sound like a fax machine, and it takes like 20 minutes to download a little file that fits on a floppy disk. And this is what it was. It took 20 minutes. So you figured out, if it takes him 20 minutes upstairs, it will take him just as long down here. So Tia must be hungry and thirsty. They put their Turkish tea and pancakes. It's just being nice, right? And I was like, that's not German. I don't know to touch this. He touched this. He touched all this with his dirty Turkish fingers. It's Muslim. It's Turkish. I don't want this. Is he going to poison me? Did he put blood in the pancakes? What did he do? I don't. But on the other hand, I also heard in this culture, if you reject a generous offer of food, that they might be really offended. So I had on one hand this, on the other hand this, well, what am I going to do? And I did something very selfish. I drank the tea and ate the pancakes. Why selfish? I didn't want to find out how much he would be offended. Still my landlord. I was under the impression he may kick me out of the house or whatever. I don't know what I was thinking. And you know what? It was really good. And since I liked it every time, of course, he had more stuff that broke, and I was sitting in his living room much more often, and every time when I arrived, there was already pancakes and tea. And I ate it and drank it. That was over a course of like 6 months. This slow friendship, this unlikely friendship that was developing that you can see. I couldn't see it at the time because I lied to myself. At some point, I even rejected his money because finally I found a job. That was the problem. After being in this movement and then finding a job, you need a resume. What would I have put in my resume? What did you do the last 5 years? Leader of the KKK? Okay, no resume, no job. Staffing company, they didn't care. So I had a job, I wasn't as desperate anymore. I rejected the money, I just helped him at the point. And he invited me for dinner one night. Oh, that's different. Like, it's different from sitting on his desk repairing the computer, and then sitting in his kitchen with his family, where you invite only, like in your kitchen, you invite only friends and family to your kitchen, right? That's different from your living room, that's different from somewhere else. I said yes, and I went alone. I can't remember if he didn't have a babysitter or whatever, but I went there, and I was sitting there in his kitchen. It was weird, like his wife and the kids spoke very badly German, very broken. They had a Turkish TV channel on, and I was like, okay, what have they got to serve for food? Couscous and falafel? No, I had my pancake situation there again. Question in the room, who likes fish soup? Okay, you can feel my pain. Yeah, it's always the same. Nobody or one or two people, no matter how many people it is. So you feel my pain because the appetizer was fish soup. And the weird thing is, I asked many Turkish people afterwards, it's not even a Turkish thing. It was just his thing. And I was like, it just doesn't go down there, period. And I was sitting there and I was like, I don't want to eat this. I can't eat it. I need to tell him. For 6 months I was trying to unmask him because I was convinced he's going to kill me in my sleep at some point because he's the Muslim terrorist that I thought he was, hidden behind a mask, the mask of the nice guy. And I was like, oh, now I can unmask him because I have to tell him I don't like this. He will turn into this ugly Muslim. I told him, I don't like fish soup. It's tick, 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 like a time bomb. Guess what happened? Anybody?
Yes.
Nothing. The wife came, took the fish soup, brought an entree. Chicken and fries. And I was like, are you kidding me? What happened to couscous and falafel? And looking back, who am I to judge him? Because I thought that's so normal. Chicken and fries, who am I to judge him if that's normal for him? Just because I like chicken and fries and I expect him only to like couscous and falafel? Because He looks different, he speaks different, he's from a different country, he prays different. That means we can't have nothing in common, not even chicken and fries, but there it is. That's so normal. And then I thought, wait a minute. During the last 6 months, of course we talked. It's like, that guy is worrying about his children the same as I worry about my children. This guy's worrying about his future in this country the same as I worry about my future in this country. He likes good movies, he likes good drink, he likes chicken and fries. He's just trying to make it. I can't hate that man. There was no way. You see, my hate was completely laying in front of me in crumbs. And I was like, okay, I was completely thrown off track, because until then I was in warrior mode. I wanted to hate him, and all he came on was his hippie love, you know? I was like, I don't want this. But now I was sitting here, and I had to think about, what am I going to do with those crumbs? Am I putting them back together to this loaf of hate that I used to nurture? Or am I going to analyze them? See, I was in a situation when I received something from him that put me off track. It was compassion and unconditional love. The compassion that I didn't receive as a child. The compassion that I didn't receive in school. That I thought I would receive in that movement. Well, even neo-Nazis have compassion. It's very selective, like this. It's not much. And then the compassion that I received from somebody that I was supposed to hate at a time when I thought I would deserve it. And yet he gave it to me. Compassion and unconditional love. And I was like, I have to find out, is it just him, or what about all the other Muslims? Maybe they're the terrorists. Maybe it's just the exception. Like lying to myself. Germany fortunately has a big Muslim population. So I got out and got to know some of them. Guess what? They cared for their children, worked for the children just the same as I did for mine. They worried about their future and their country just the same as I did. They like good music, a good movie. Guess what? They also like chicken and fries. I was like, wow. And I decided this is all so wrong. Everything started to crumble. I was like, everything, juice, anything, all the hatred was wrong. I started realizing, no, I started reading books. Yes, I accepted the Holocaust happened. Yes, this is all true. No idea why I denied it. So, and I thought I was okay. I didn't talk about it publicly for almost 10 years. The reason for that is rejection. You know, we all know America loves redemption. Germany does too, but not when it comes to Nazis. And that is very, very understandable, looking at the history. And Germany has a hard time to believe if people can change, especially when they have been Nazis. It's gotten a little bit better. And then 2012, there was a lot of things personally going on in my life, a business, and then Dave mentioned a famous newspaper article as well. And I always loved the USA. I had an aunt that immigrated to San Diego in 1956, Hollywood movies, the land of endless opportunities, the American dream. I knew I loved the English language. I started learning that early. I knew I would end up here at some day. I almost moved in 2011. A record company wanted to hire me as an A&R representative, but they couldn't get a sponsor. So about 2012 was the time, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to do this. Coincidentally, there's a completely different story that I'm not going to tell today. I moved to Olive Branch. It was a coincidence. I didn't even know how close it is to Memphis. I just knew it was in the southeast, in Mississippi, and I knew somebody in the area in San Antonio. And I remember I called him. I said, how far are you living from Olive Branch? He said, like 40 minutes. Okay, I'm moving there. And I told him for years I'm going to move someday. I said, yeah, sure. I said, no, one day I will knock at your door. So, and I had a chance to get to know some of the kids and people in the African-American community. And as we know, Memphis has an African-American population of nearly 70%. That gave me a great opportunity. I'm skipping, of course, the story how I met Carmen, which is also relevant to the story because she is my greatest supporter ever since. And of course, we told each other about anything that was going on in our lives very, very early. Second date was let's tell each other everything. And so it gave me this opportunity in the long run to get to know another people that I once hated, the black community. And guess what? These kids worried about their future the same as my kids worry about their future. They love a good movie, they love good music. And guess what? They love chicken and fries. How did it? I was like, wow. I can't hate those kids. I can't hate those people. I just can't. Then in 2018, I finally got to know the Jewish community. This is me speaking at a yeshiva, a Jewish school in New York City. And guess what? They also like chicken and fries. Some kosher, but still chicken and fries. But I didn't know until then. I thought you filter fish all day long. How is that? How does this happen? It's this ignorance because you don't know better, because you don't sit down with people you think you have nothing in common with. And this is exactly the problem. It's the ignorance we have because we don't know, or very often don't want to know better. And that leads to fear. And if that is left unrecognized, it can lead to hate. Let me tell you an example. And we all remember, you probably remember your kids or the grandkids, that they were afraid of the monster under the bed at some point, or in the closet. I remember my kids, I remember myself being afraid. So what do we do as parents or grandparents? We don't call our kids out, depending where we stand politically. Oh, I haven't seen a Fox or CNN, are you stupid? No, of course not. Why don't we do that? Because we know the fear might not be substantial, but it's real. We know our kids or grandkids are really scared of this monster that's not there. And we hug them and show them the compassion and unconditional love, right? Knowingly that the fear is not substantial. And this is how I felt. Being a neo-Nazi that was living in fear all day long. You get up in the morning, you're like, what's happening today? Either the race war is starting, or the Jews are taking over the world, or the police is coming raiding your house, or whatever. You were in constant paranoia, and you were at war with the world, with everybody who was different. It was not nice. It was stressful. And for that stress that you brought on yourself, you blamed everybody else. But it was actually so easy to solve. Again. So at this point, I'm trying to make the rest short. I believe it's another 10, 15 minutes, and then we're through. It's a little bit longer than Margaret probably announced, but my story is complex. I'm a very complex person, so it's not totally 20 minutes. The most important people in this journey, ever since I got out, I want to talk about some of my former enemies that I once had. And it started in 2018. So I had already made up with the black community, with the Muslim community. But at that point, I'd never talked to anybody who was Jewish. Because in Germany, I didn't have the chance. I also never went to a concentration camp. Because at the time, when I was 13, we learned about it in school. But unfortunately, there was no money to send kids in school classes to Auschwitz in these places. Fortunately, that has changed. Again, Germany is doing a very great job. When I was in the movement, I didn't want to go to concentration camp because I was a Holocaust denier at that point. And I was like, you don't need to show me something that I thought was a lie. And when I got out and I finally believed, yes, it happened, I felt like I don't need to go because you don't have to prove anything to me anymore. I do believe it now. But you see how I pushed it away. So in 2018, the Dutch College of the Chapman University in California made a film about me, and they screened it in LA and invited me to go there. And you know what you do when you go to LA for the first time. Go see Hollywood, go to Santa Monica, the beach on the pier, and put your feet in the sand. And I did all that. And another former, and we call these people like me former white supremacists, former neo-Nazis, or just short formers. There's a lot of them. There's a network of them that do work together to help other people. And I will tell you about that too in a minute. So one of these formers, she told me, you need to go see the Museum of Tolerance. And I didn't know anything about them. It's run by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Simon Wiesenthal was the famous Nazi hunter who pledged his life to hunting down real Nazis from World War II to bring them to justice. And he did that a lot. And the museum was run by two rabbis, well, at least at that point it was two rabbis who founded it, and had Simon Wiesenthal as the namesake. So I went there, and it was just like the three of us, VIP tour. Usually you would have like a school group or a group of teachers. It was only three of us with a senior researcher, Rick. And they have different exhibits there. One was the Civil Rights exhibit. The other one was the new Anne Frank exhibit. And the other one was the Holocaust exhibit. Oh, there was it. It's always pushed away. When you walk through towards the end, they have like this replica of the Warsaw Ghetto. And then you walk towards two doors. One is for children and women, and the other one is for men. Behind the two doors is the same room. A dark room called the Hall of Testimonies, a kind of a concrete bunker modeled after a gas chamber, with dimmed light, and it had a couple TVs in it where Holocaust survivors were telling their stories. But they made you feel really uncomfortable being in this room. This was quite an experience for me because I've never experienced that before. And at the end, you walk out and there's a sign over the door, who's really responsible? And I walked out and I felt like, wow. I just realized, even though I thought I was okay, I knew I didn't hate Jews anymore. I knew the Holocaust happened, but I all of a sudden knew that I hadn't reflected on my past as an anti-Semite. Because I didn't have the chance. And I said to Rick, I need to work with you guys. It was May 2018. So he was like, well, school is out for summer. We have like programs where formers can go to colleges and so on and tell their stories. Let's talk after the summer. So after the summer, we started talking. That new campus directors, everything took a while, nothing happened. And then in the end of October 2018, a neo-Nazi attacked the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh and murdered 11 people just because they were Jewish. And it was like, okay, we have to send our new secret weapon TM out right now. And that's what they did. Within 2 days, I went to my first gig at a college at Northeastern University in Boston. Mostly Jewish students, but I couldn't really communicate. I was like going in, telling the story, going out, the plane was going. But the second one was just 3 days later, Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. So we're back in the South here. And it was organized by Jewish Fraternity, API, and a Jewish student organization, and the Sound Movies and Thought Center. And those students, the student leadership, wanted to get to know me beforehand. So they organized a dinner the night before in a nice southern restaurant. I didn't think about anything about it first. And then again, how will they look like? Again, I remember this picture here. Because I knew the other ugly picture I showed you, I knew that's not how they look like. But probably like this. Other than that, I met Rick, he was Jewish. Well, he looked normal, but what about the others? Like this? And again, will they all eat gefilte fish? This is a southern restaurant, I don't think they have that. I caught myself sitting in this restaurant. There was about maybe as many as we are here. And me, the director, the campus director, and the rest were all Jewish students. And I was looking around trying to find somebody who looks Jewish. Right, so how do Jews look like? And I was like, the one has red hair, I don't know. The one has a black kid, I was confused. Oh, the one has a Star of David. He must be Jewish. And of course, they picked my brain and told me, well, the black kid, the mother was Jewish, the father was black. Well, he's both. Surprise. And I was like, I didn't know this is possible. And I was like, well, this is Southern food, and you have like biscuits and ham and whatever. Well, what the hell happened to kosher? Don't want to step on your toes. And they explained to me that some don't keep kosher and so on, that there's different denominations in Judaism, which I didn't know. I thought they're all the same, look like this. And I realized, wow, this community is just as diverse as any other community. And these kids are just normal kids, and they look like this. Like any other kid. This is actually Northeastern in Boston again this year, 3 years after my first gig, and they called me back for the next generation of students. This is my dear friend, Jeff Narrett. He's one of the directors of one of the Jewish organizations. So I spent my first Jewish holiday there, Hanukkah, at the college together with him. And then he invited me back for Pesach, at his house. So I got to know this Jewish community. I was fascinated by it because I liked the ethics. I liked what they do, how much they are involved in humanitarian things. And then we had the ethics. I like the ethics too in Judaism. I was like, wow, they line up 100% with my newly found ethics as well. Wow. But I didn't know much about the religion, and I was like, well, the Jews have a high holiday, Yom Kippur, but I had no idea what it was about. But I wanted to learn about it because, again, I hadn't made up for my past as an anti-Semite, and I thought I have to. So I called my contact, Allison. She runs the Midwest office of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And we're in 2019 now, and I asked her, it was September, and I asked her, I would like to go to Yom Kippur to a synagogue just to see what it is. And she said, look, I'm Orthodox. I don't even drive on Shabbat, so I don't know. Why don't you go to a synagogue in Memphis and ask if you can attend? Well, the problem was at the time I was not in touch with anybody in the Jewish community in Memphis. They probably didn't even know I existed. I said, Allison, do you want me to go to the synagogue and knock at the door and tell them, hey, I'm the former Nazi. Can I come for Yom Kippur? So I thought maybe next year. I'm big in the interfaith community. So since 2018, we have different programs. Of course, COVID put a big halt on everything, but we organized the first Memphis Peace Conference on Beale Street at Willis Collection Museum. And 2019, we partnered up with the Pink Palace and organized another event there for our interfaith group. And I was the MC at the group running the event. And somebody invited a rabbi that I've never had seen. I was like, this is my chance. And of course, being the MC, my past was really not important, was not talked about, nobody cared. And therefore, the rabbi didn't know about it. And so I introduced myself, said I'm a speaker against anti-Semitism for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I'm an interfaith activist, and I'm exploring Judaism, and I would wonder if I can maybe come to a synagogue for Yom Kippur. And the night before Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur was recommended, and he was like, he gave me his card and said, let's talk. And I went home and I was like, oops, there's something I forgot to tell him about me, and he may want to know that before I come the first time. So I texted him and said, you may want to look me up on Wikipedia or my website, and if it's still cool, then okay. And I didn't hear back. I was like, of course. The people I vilified the most, and especially a rabbi, of course, if he finds out, he will turn his back on me. My long-term fear of rejection was back. I was like, there it is, I know it, maybe next year. It was Tuesday night. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday night, he texts back and says, literally, okay, you can come, I'm looking for learning you. Those are his exact words. I was wondering, why did it take him 2 days? Then Rick calls me from the Simon Wiesenthal Center and says, hey, a rabbi checked you out from Memphis. We sent an email back and told him you're kosher. So I got the official kosher stamp from the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I don't think the rabbi knows it to today that I know this. So I went, and to this day, to that day, when I went to Erev Yom Kippur, I've never been to a synagogue other than to speak and tell my story. That was the first time that I went there for a real service. And this is a picture of the day. So this is stuff even Dave hasn't seen because that was actually after that. So I wore a kippah, and I got a text. It's a conservative synagogue. I got a text so I can read the Hebrew in Latin letters. And I think I did a decent job. I'm probably bad judge for myself, but I believe so. And I remember after the service, somebody walks up and said, TM, because everybody knew who I was. The rabbi told everybody before that day. And everybody was cool with that. Very warm welcome and everything. And somebody asked me, TM, tell us about anti-Semitism in Germany. How is it today? And like I told you all before, I told them proudly Germany has done a great job making up for it, reflecting on, and making sure it must never happen again. And I went home, and the next day I turned on my phone and see the news from overseas that a German neo-Nazi had attacked the synagogue in Halle, Germany. even killed 2 people. They were outside, were not Jews, but still. And I felt betrayed by the country where I came from, and I felt like a liar. Because what I told these people the night before, I was like, what have I done? But something else came up too. I had a very bad feeling crawled up my back, and I felt very uncomfortable. It's like, wait a minute. So I wore this kippah, I prayed in Hebrew, I looked Jewish, I prayed like a Jew, I made myself part of the community that night. If anybody would have entered the synagogue violently to kill the people inside, I would have been dead. I would have been one of the victims. Something changed, because before that, every time something happened to my friends in minority communities, when Elton Sterling was killed in 2016 or George Floyd in 2018, I was 20. Every time I asked my black friends and said, are you guys okay? Do you feel safe going out of the house? And I felt sorry, but I never could walk in their shoes because I wasn't black. When Christchurch happened, I asked my Muslim friends, are you okay? I felt genuinely sorry, but I couldn't walk in their shoes. I wasn't Muslim. When the Tree of Life synagogue was attacked and 11 Jews were murdered just because they were Jewish, I picked up the phone and asked them, are you guys okay? Can I do something for you? But I couldn't walk in their shoes. I wasn't Jewish. But here I was sitting this day, reflecting on the night before, and for the first time in my life, I knew how it feels not to feel safe because you're part of a minority group, because I could have been one of the victims. That changed something for me. You know, I travel the country a lot, and at the beginning I shared my story about my change, and that is very powerful to many, just the story of change itself, how people can change through the power of compassion. But I always thought there must be some more I can give people, that they can take home, and what they can do with it. And I never knew what it was. And it got even worse after this day, because whenever something happened now, I felt just as helpless as they did, all of a sudden. And I didn't know what to do. And it took me a couple of months, and I was like, I need to have an answer for everybody, because we all feel helpless when things like this happen. We don't know how to respond. We don't know how to do, but call our friends, are you okay? Or them going out of the house feeling unsafe. And a couple of months later, just before COVID, I was we just moved. We actually lived in Horn Lake before and just moved out in the country. Now we're on a 10-day speaking tour. The first leg was Chicago. It was like, we had one event that was led by a rabbi. It was a lunch meeting of business people, and about 20 people. And the rabbi asked me if he may share a story before I speak about something that happened just a week prior to that. I said, sure. It was a story of a young woman who went to the Michigan State University. And she went there and had a dorm, so she lived on campus. And Jews have mezuzahs at their doors, so these little scrolls with a portion of the Torah that they put there. And there was a lot of anti-Semitic attacks at the time in the media. You could read about it. And it was stolen. And she was a little bit afraid it could have been an anti-Semitic attack, but she didn't know how intentional it was. So she reported it to the police, and the police looked, and fortunately they had cameras, could find the person who did it. It was another student who also lived on campus. So they found the guy, and they asked the woman if she wants to press charges. And she said no. They were like, that must be a Nazi, probably an anti-Semite. We need to expel him from school. We need to press charges, don't we? I said, no. So what do you want to do? I want to sit down with him. Like, what? So they sat down, of course, was a rabbi with them, and somebody from the ADL, and somebody from the school. And they realized the young man had no idea what he did. He knew the mezuzah was something Jewish. If he takes it down, he would hurt her personally. That was his intention. He didn't hate Jews, but he realized the intent of his whole doing. And once he did that, he apologized and gave her money for a new mezuzah. And he pledged to go and take a tour at the Holocaust Museum. You see what she did there? Well, everybody put him already in a box and put a label on it. He must be a Nazi, an anti-Semite. Yeah, looks like a duck, walks like a duck, walks like a duck, must be a duck. Did something anti-Semitic? Must be an anti-Semite. Well, he wasn't. So while he was living in the box already, just like I was as a teenager, put on the shelf and I was breathing there, there's two things we all can do when something like this happens. And the one thing is, leave him in the box. Let him breathe there, and at some point, it's the guys with the white hoods and the swastikas. They will open the box and pull him out, and then we lost him. Or we can do what the young woman did. She opened the box, saw the human being in there, maybe full of fear, like the children afraid of the monster under the bed. Pull him out, put him back on track, something completely unexpected for the young man in the box too. And put him back on track. She maybe has saved him from becoming the next synagogue shooter. Or next school shooter. This is the great power everybody has, showing this compassion. Looking at people, because when they're in the box, we don't see where they are on this. Another example before I wrap it up, and you probably have a couple questions. And if people are in the box, you don't see where they are. Are they here? Are they here? That's one example, 2018, happened here somewhere in East Memphis or Germantown. At a school, high school, and a white kid wrote the N-word on a table. Was a big deal, and everybody wanted to expel the kid from school just for doing this. Must be racist, right? Parents probably the Klan. I mean, he uses the N-word. Must be a racist. Did something racist. And he indeed got kicked out of school. But the problem is, nobody looked in this box that he was already in. How intentional this was. Did he hear the N-word from Uncle Baba last night for the very first time? We will never know. As parents of the Klan, we will never know. We will never know where he is. We will never know if we could pull him out of the box or if the Klan is now waiting until he breathes in there and they can pull him out. Because nobody took the opportunity to open this box. We lost that opportunity. So this happened here in Memphis. I have many more examples, but this is one of them. And people should have opened the box. They should not have expelled him from school. Maybe if it's happened the fifth time or whatever, yes. But as long as somebody is savable, we need to show compassion. So here our solution, compassion and humanization. And the last thing I'm going to say with one little more story. I'm a storyteller, you can tell. And if you let me, I will talk all day long. So the solution is compassion and humanization. So I'm originally from Germany, born and raised there. And people ask me all the time, how could a whole population participate in a genocide or look away? Bad genetics or something? Well, if I look at my kids, I don't think so. I don't think that's the problem. The problem is dehumanization. The Nazis were very, very good in dehumanizing the other. Everybody who was against them, and worst of all, the Jewish population. They convinced people to turn against their neighbors and call the Gestapo on them so they would go to Auschwitz and so on. They would call them names, compare them to lice and bugs and whatever, anything but human beings. And we see that today in this environment, if we see at conservatives and liberals, what they call each other. You probably have all heard it, what they call each other, right? And I guarantee, and I unfortunately have done it before, and called political other names that I shouldn't have, without realizing how dehumanizing this is. Or just simple mock names. You call somebody, I think all of us have done it in their lives at some point. Call somebody with a bad name. Might even be behind their backs. So how quick it goes, I made an experiment here in Memphis at Mullins Hebrew School, Jewish school, just not too far from here down the road. Just this year, the weekend before, the Friday before MLK Day. And I was invited there to speak, and I spoke to all kids from third grade up to high school. And when I was with the middle schoolers, I did an experiment. So I asked my famous question, who likes, in this case it was cauliflower. Who likes cauliflower? So of all the kids, 3 of them. So I picked one, it was AJ. So AJ, you don't like cauliflower? I said, no. Said, what would you think if, no, he did, sorry. It was one of the kids who did. And he said, yes. I said, okay, so since you like cauliflower, what would you think if all the other kids would start calling you cauliflower head? Would you like that? I said, no, of course not. Okay, so his seating neighbor, who was probably his friend, started calling him cauliflower head several times and started pushing him around. So I gave them the opportunity, just 1 second, the opportunity to dehumanize somebody, and within a second they became physical to one of their friends. In front of the principal, in front of the rabbi, in front of me. So I asked AJ's seating neighbor who pushed him, I said, so was it fun pushing the cauliflower head? He said, yeah. I said, but you actually like your friend AJ, right? I said, yeah. So do you want to push him? Do you want to push AJ again? I said, no. So this is why it's so important that we don't dehumanize people, not even with mock names. Also the other, we hear it so often, political opponents, how we call it, they call each other libtards and racists and baby killers and Trumpsters. Isn't it so much easier to chase the baby killer down the street and hit them over the head than Jill? Or chase the racist, the Trumpster down the head than Jack? Once we dehumanize them, it's so easy to commit violence or call for violence or look away. This is why these things are the solution and so important. Compassion and unconditional love and humanization. I really made it, we're through. I hope you have a couple of minutes. If you have questions, I'm here to answer them. Maybe I have answered all the questions you had in my talk. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Thank you for not walking out on me, even though it took longer. Fortunately, I've never had anybody walk out on me, even though it's a long lecture. I know this, so I appreciate you all for staying.
Thank you again.
Okay,
so
I hand
much
this back to you.
for giving us your time, and I pray that each of us will leave here a different person and with an open mind and heart, and that we will take these words to heart. If you will, let's bow together, and Nancy Blankenship will lead us in prayer.
Most gracious and loving God, we thank you for this day that we have enjoyed and learned and appreciated. We thank you for the life that was changed and has developed, has dedicated his life to humanization and compassion. We ask your blessings on each one here today. We're grateful for this group. We love getting together. We're grateful for the gift of life itself. For each day, a gift to us, that we may remember to use it in a meaningful way with compassion and concern. We ask your blessings on us as we part, that we may live safely and meaningfully and get back together soon. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you again, and have a great day.